Well, hey there, Dave Sobel here. I am trying out some live streaming stuff, and we're going to go ahead and play with the new technology a little bit and see how this all works out. So I appreciate you diving in with me. This is the first of some playing with some new tech kind of stuff, and I want to go ahead and walk you through a little bit of the way that I think about stories for the Business of Tech podcast, and give you some of the ones that I'm looking at right now at the Consumer Electronics Show. With the large number of stories that are out there right now, I figured it would be a fun time to dive in a little bit and walk you through some of the stuff that I've spotted already. Not sure these ones are going to make the show, but I want to give you some of my reasoning and walk you through some cool ones. We can talk a little bit about what the trends mean, and then from there I'll give you a little bit of insight. So let's dive in a little bit here. So I have to start with AI here and facial recognition, because I couldn't believe when I spotted that they're doing facial recognition on cats. This one is a little wacky. Definitely the idea here being that you can definitely see. If you're a cat owner, you don't know which of your cats may have had an accident or may have been the one that caused a little bit of trouble. And by using facial recognition, you can keep track of which cats will have done the dirty deed and then be able to know more about them. $149, available on Amazon in March. This is one of those interesting facial recognition stories. I'm not sure how I feel about cameras in the home in this particular case, but definitely something that was caught my eye from the facial recognition perspective. I think this may trend more toward gimmicky. I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'm curious the uses of facial recognition that make a little bit of sense. And if I'm kind of thinking aloud and talking you through the way that I'm thinking on this, I'm looking for facial recognition stories that have real business cases behind them. I'm trying to balance them against a privacy and security perspective, and I'm not sure this one's quite that. So that's kind of my head's at where I'm thinking about that is what facial recognition stories matter from that perspective. Where do we have the need? What is the kind of the way that this is going to go, and what's the implications? Cats, not so sure that one matters. So this one, however, does. Modular PCs is one of those areas where I've been really intrigued to see what actually happens here. The idea of having desktop PCs be truly modular, where I can swap out the various components in a much easier way, really kind of matters. I think this is where, when I alluded to gaming being a trendsetter, this is where my head was at in terms of thinking about it, is that, if you're looking for modularity and be able to see where a business PC might be swappable, or maybe we can do something kind of interesting with it, this is the tech that interests me, is seeing us borrow something from gaming here. I see this as kind of really intriguing. What if the idea of being able to swap out these components was a lot easier than they are now, particularly in that small of a form factor? We normally think about this a lot from the desktop perspective. You can swap out cards, but if we can move towards swappable PCs and then maybe even swappable laptops, this makes me a lot more interesting. Now, I'm also going to say that one of the things that was also intriguing me is the foldable stuff that we're seeing. I think foldables are gimmicks right now. I have not seen one that actually kind of matters from my perspective. We had a bunch of stuff that happened last year from a foldable phone perspective that didn't take off. This did intrigue me, but I'm not sure yet. This is one again where I'm I'm saying, what's the value here? Are they gimmicks? Are they something that can actually be usable? Are they just another versions of a tablet? I'm not sure. And I think that's the bit that we're ultimately going to be looking at to say, does this really matter? Now, here's something that did intrigue me a lot. This is Chromebooks. I've been thinking a lot particularly when we talk about the future of PCs and how this all would spring together. Can you actually pull together, a Chromebook as a machine, use streaming apps, say something like coming out of xCloud, the way Microsoft is doing it, and put this together into something useful? Hey there, Tom. Nice of you to join the chat stream. I'm exploring CES ideas and trying this out. So the idea here is could you pull together Chromebooks into something truly useful? This is where it gets interesting to me from a technology and a technology services perspective, because I look at, say, like, I can actually see something really coming of this from a business perspective. Give me a Chromebook, allow me to stream certain high performance app that I need to do it from that I need to use for business, and they could be truly reusable endpoints. From my also coming from a solution provider MSP perspective, that market space is not ready for this at all, because if you look at the typical MSP tools and you see the kinds of things that we've been thinking about from that perspective, the vendors are not ready for this. And this would be one of those trends that kind of really matters. And I don't see us as a technology services community ready for this. I am super intriguing to this. Is if you say, like, hey, I'm a business user and I can find a use for a Chromebook and I can actually make something interesting out of it, this matters. So this is a trend that I'm really kind of interested in. And it's when I allude to on the podcast, when I talk to how can we get stuff out of the gaming space, this is the area that really matters. Now, I got to follow up on this because it intrigued me a lot based on the way CES presented last year. So to catch you up, if you may not have tracked this story, this product was announced last year by Laura DiCarlo here, and she announced this tool or this sex toy and won an award for it at CES, and then went through that being revoked and being banned because it was a sex toy. The folks behind the Consumer Electronics Show got a lot of heat for that last year, in terms of that from the perspective of going to market that way. And this year have allowed SexTech to be part of the show. This is now the company has come out and they've actually done two new products related to that and are actually fully representing this year. It was an interesting reversal on the CTA's part to actually make these changes from a technology perspective. That is what I was hoping they would learn from. And it appears they did not, because as we look at the new area of technology around cannabis, the folks from CTA went ahead and looks like they've managed to do the same thing. They've got a product which is a weed-based product, and they have declared that this manufacturer could exhibit, but they couldn't mention cannabis at all. Again, this is one that's leaving me scratching my head a little bit, and I'm saying I'm not entirely sure what the CTA is thinking here. I bring this tech area up because from a services perspective, I've been hearing a ton of buzz around this marketplace. The folks at Channel Pro have done a bunch of exhibiting around Cannabis Tech this past year, particularly from an IoT perspective. There's such a need for the technology that monitors and manages the plants. That's been kind of an intriguing area. So to see Cannabis Tech taking off a Consumer Electronics Show, but then the CTA reacting the same way that they reacted last year was surprising to me. I think there's something to this whole marketplace in terms of something coming from it, for the same reason that I don't think there should be a stigma around the sex tech. I don't think there should be a stigma around the weed tech either. This is just an application of technology, and there are needs for service providers in this space. That's the area. Tom, you bring up a great question. Is cannabis the problem or the device? From the CTA's perspective, what they cited was that the cannabis was the problem. I am left with the irony of the fact that they were showing this in Nevada, where it's legal for personal use. So they're talking about this is a storage device allowed to store the cannabis, allowing it so that it was only for authorized users. So if you were purchasing it. You could store it safely, have only your access to it. The tech was recognized by the CTA as interesting, has recognized it as an honoree in the home appliance category, but then they won't allow you to talk about cannabis. So that was kind of the piece that was intriguing to me. I wanted to give this kind of insight into tech and where I go for a big reason. So to give you the why on this, these are the kinds of stories that I'm digging into looking at Consumer Electronics Show. Why do I care? I do a daily 5-minute podcast called The Business of Tech. I break down technology for business solution providers, and that's the angle that I'm looking for. I made some statements around the way that I thought that the trends coming out of Consumer Electronics Show would go. I thought a couple of areas that we wanted to track would be issues that we're looking for. The first one I'll be covering on the podcast that comes out today. It launches at 5 p.m. We've seen some real emergence of privacy and how the big tech companies are responding to privacy, and I make some discussions around that tech trend. I discuss some of the stuff that I'm seeing coming out of gaming. I think we were also going to be looking for some 5G stuff and a couple of others. Thanks again, Tom. I have a cool setup here, both from a podcasting perspective as well as my retro gaming stuff. So I appreciate this trial out of the stream. I'm going to be looking to do more of these behind the scenes and insightful pieces from the business of tech. You can subscribe to the podcast at mspradio.com or the newsletter, which is a weekly newsletter giving you some of the insights into the stories and pulling together some of the stuff that I've been up to. I am Dave Sobel. I am the host of the business of tech. Really appreciate you joining me for this quick live stream, trying stuff out. Looking forward to doing more of these and doing them more on a scheduled basis. Thanks a lot.